Okay, it's about time we tackled the disgusting book, Eat, Pray, Love, made by this even more disgusting author, Elizabeth Gilbert, because it's not just that she's a terrible person, which she is. It's because so many women bought this book and watched the movie that was made from the book. Her bad behavior is actually exemplifies what the average woman is or desires. Now, this young lady, Quality Culture, gives a nuanced critique. You know what? Whenever I see that word nuanced, what they're really saying is we're going to sugarcoat this bad behavior. There's nothing nuanced. This is a bad person, everybody. Now, let's get into it.
On September 3rd, 2004, author and journalist Elizabeth Gilbert got on a plane from New York to Rome, kicking off a year-long journey that would change her life in ways she didn't expect. She was a depressed wreck.
Oh, by the way, it didn't change her life. She's exactly the way now as she was before,
Following a nasty divorce and subsequent toxic romance. So in an extreme effort to get her life together, she'd pitched an idea to her publisher. She was going to write a memoir about her travels and path to self-discovery. In her
By the way, the toxic romance, she is the one who provided all the toxicity.
her words, it wasn't so much that I wanted to thoroughly explore the countries themselves. This has been done. It was more that I wanted to thoroughly explore one aspect of myself set against the backdrop of each country.
See, she's not interested in the countries. This is all about herself. That book, when it says eat, pray, love, love means self-love. It's not the love of others, right? So she's admitting it right here. This is completely self-centered.
In a place that has traditionally done that one thing very well. I wanted to explore the art of pleasure in Italy, the art of devotion.
Okay, so it's hedonism, right? Exactly. She breaks up with her man, then she goes out to enjoy an easy life of hedonism.
In India, and in Indonesia, the art of balancing the two. In February 2006, the book was published. Eat, Pray, Love, One Woman's Search for Everything Across Italy, India, and Indonesia. And Elizabeth, who I'll just call Liz, was blindsided by the overwhelming response.
Do you see that? She's brought on television. It's an overwhelming response. People bring this disgusting person here on, and these women embrace her because they feel the same way.
I thought I was committing career suicide because I left my really good job and I had been sort of known as a literary author, and then I went and wrote this very emotional, very vulnerable memoir. Yeah. And I thought, I'm sorry, world, that I have to do this, but I have to do this. Nobody's going to want it. And then I'll go back to doing stuff people want me to do. And it appeared that I was incorrect.
The memoir.
So she just gave up her job. Hey, guys, how many of you can just give up your job and then come back to it, right?
Exploded in popularity, infiltrating book clubs everywhere. It sold over 10 million copies and was adapted into a 2010 film directed by Ryan Murphy and starring Julia Roberts.
Thank you for making my point for me. What's your name again? Quality Culture. It was embraced, period. So this woman, this disgusting, self-centered woman, is speaking for the average woman.
Of course, widespread popularity is usually accompanied by a counter-reaction. As much as people revered it, it seemed there were just as many, if not more, who absolutely detested it, whether or not they read the book or watched the movie.
A whole section of people who are like,
they don't need to read it or watch the movie to know what this is about and what this woman's about.
Messiah.
This is my favorite book in the entire world, and there are people who are like, I wish you didn't exist.
I think it's one of the most polarizing pieces of media in recent history, and I wanted to explore that. Whether it's as extraordinary as fans believe or as hollow as critics claim, though obviously it's all subjective in the end.
No, it's not subjective. It is completely hollow. This woman broke up with her husband, didn't get everything she wanted, which you'll see in her own story. And then she went on a trip where she babied herself and made it all about herself. This is completely hollow. It's not subjective, it's objective.
Read the book for this video and can't say I loved it, but I can understand the appeal for a couple reasons. First, Elizabeth Gilbert isn't a bad writer. She's gotten somewhat of an unfair rap in the writing sphere because of this book. It's no mystery that media predominantly catered to women and girls is largely mocked and dismissed and held to a much higher standard of scrutiny.
No. It's understandable because it's mocked and dismissed, because this woman is a perfect example of female writing. It's all about her and it's empty, right? That's why it's mocked and dismissed, because it deserves it, quality culture. And it's not held to a higher standard. It's held to a standard, which it never meets.
Including its authors. Sometimes dunking on writing quality makes sense, but I don't think this is one of those times. She knows how to put a story together in an engaging way.
You're right. It's not about the writing quality. It's because this is a nothing burger. This woman has wrote a story where she's obviously the bad guy, and she lives an empty life.
She seems intelligent and well-spoken, and comes off as self-aware to an extent.
Did you have any idea just how much your very personal story would resonate with so many women?
I totally knew when I was sobbing on the bathroom floor at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, her self-centered story resonated with so many women. I want you to hear that, guys.
In the morning in total suicidal despair that someday Julia Roberts would want to be part of that. No.
I liked her descriptions about the histories and cultures of places she visited. I enjoyed some of her journalistic work and insights on creativity, and I might even give her fiction a chance at some point. That's not to say the book doesn't have its faults, which I'll get to, but at least the writing isn't atrocious. Secondly, the main selling point of Eat, Pray, Love is of course the element of escapism, of living vicariously through the adventures of someone who can essentially take a paid year off. It's also loosely marked.
Exactly. This privileged woman, the most privileged person you will ever find in the world, can take a paid year off and return to her job. Again, guys, how many of you can do that?
Marketed as self-help, self-improvement, though this wasn't necessarily Liz's original intention. She had—
Oh, by the way, this is their version of self-improvement, guys. Their version of self-improvement is dumping your man and going off and living a life of hedonism. That's self-improvement to women. Right.
has considered just why it caught on as much as it did, concluding that it's because the book is ultimately about, quote, what happens when one human being realizes that her life doesn't have to look like this anymore, that everything, including herself, can be changed.
This is bullshit. Her life is exactly the way it was. The only difference is she dumped her man. That's it. That's the only thing that changed her. She's the exact same person, lives in the exact same lifestyle.
Women resonated with the concept of having the agency and willpower to shape their lives the way they saw fit. There's even a 2016 essay collection called Eat, Pray, Love Made Me Do It, filled with stories of people inspired by the book. People leaving their abusive partners, or choosing to be child-free, or moving across the country or the globe.
See how they're painting abusive partners, but you're going to find out that her partner wasn't abusive.
Or doing that one thing they'd always wanted to do but never had the courage to. Eat, Pray, Love's impact in pop culture, both in terms of scorn and praise, can't be overstated. That said, the movie made the story more two-dimensional, as film adaptations often do.
If the movie made the story two-dimensional, that's one more dimension than it had before. Because the book is one-dimensional. There's no dimensions to this story. How many dimensions are there to I dump my man and then traipsed across the world babying myself and enjoying myself? There's nothing there. There's no insights to this woman's travels.
And it's just cornier in general.
Therapist.
Like, why is there a random scene where an elephant shows up? It's not—
Because the book is empty. The story's empty. So they have to add stuff in the movie.
A good movie and leaves a lot unsaid, so I'll mostly be referencing the book as we go. And accordingly, this is about 2004 book Elizabeth, whose main focus is self-reflection and healing, and consequently she may not be the same complex and multifaceted Elizabeth you meet in real life, especially today, nearly 20 years later. Anyhow, one of my main gripes with this story is that I never got the impression that it accomplished what it sets out to, that there's still a lot left unexplored. But we'll get there.
What are you talking about? The movie showed exactly what the book was, really. A self-centered woman who has it all, enjoying herself.
In 2001, Liz is plagued by unhappiness and starts contemplating the landscape of her life. She can't shake the thought that she doesn't want to be married to her husband anymore.
See, he's not abusive, is he, everyone? Is he? She's like the average woman. She's bored of her husband and she wants to eject. Who said this? I can't remember who said it in the Pro Male Collective, but they said women get married knowing that they're going to get divorced. Okay?
And can't fathom having children, which everyone around her feels is the next logical step.
I had actively participated in every.
By the way, like again, everyone, women don't really want children, really, for the children. A lot of women don't want children, right?
Moment of the creation of.
What they're really saying is, I'm surprised you don't want someone who is all about you and that you can have as leverage against your husband.
This life. So why didn't I see myself in any of it?
She feels trapped in a conventional trajectory she never really wanted. One where
this is nonsense. She doesn't feel trapped. This is what she wanted. She got married to the man because she wanted a provider. This is exactly what it is. She's bored with it.
a woman's purpose is marked by being a good wife and mother. The white picket fence life, so to speak. Of course, there's nothing wrong with this path if chosen willingly and mindfully, but evidently that's not how she'd gotten here. Women.
So she got married just because she wanted to? I mean, because that's what people do? Come on, this is horseshit. This is excuse making. This woman knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted to at the time, and now she's tired of it. And if this woman actually learned something from her travels, she would take the blame for her choices. But she isn't, right? She's a victim for what she decided to do.
Reading along deeply related to this sense of disillusionment, a persistent dissatisfaction stemming from the idea that they'd been living a life chosen for them rather than the other way around. Liz suggesting that
No. What it is that this woman, being a very typical woman, has no inner life. She has no inner life. She is a boring existence because she is a boring person. That's what's going on here.
that she's never felt a motherly urge is still often viewed as a mark of failure in women, and this was even more true 20-odd years ago. In its own way, Eat, Pray, Love offered an example of a woman resisting social norms.
I don't know why we can't just accept that we don't want to live in unhappiness anymore.
But this dissatisfaction was only part of the issue. Liz describes how since she was a teenager, her life was defined by men and relationships. Even her writing career up to that point mostly revolved around men and masculinity, with her job at GQ and novels about men's spaces. Someone once told her she was one of those people who always look like the person they're currently dating.
Yeah, you used to look like Steven. I kind of look like David. You know how people start resembling their dogs?
I'm the sort of girl who always had a boyfriend, kind of serial monogamist of the worst degree, and my entire life had just been one love story after another, generally overlapping.
So she pumps and dumps. This woman's too self-centered to be with a man. It's that simple.
I took vows till death, and I take them seriously.
There you go. That's very important. This movie is actually exposing this disgusting person, Elizabeth, for what she is. The man gets married, and he means what he says. And the woman gets married, and she lies at the altar. She has no plans on Till Death Do You Part. This man in this scene is showing character. The woman has zero character, zero principles.
In the book and film, the reasons for her divorce were left purposefully vague for privacy, but it makes a little more sense after a 2015 article she penned for the New York Times, where she states she left her husband for another man.
There you go, everyone. So they start, this woman here, Folded Culture, talks about an abusive relationship, right? But here she is admitting that she was cheating on her husband and she dumped him. She never respected him. She never loved him. And she was bored with him. And he served his purpose. And this book and story of hers is followed by women in masses. So ladies, if you're ever listening, this is saying something about you.
The David guy played by James Franco in the movie. Maybe it's just me, but this was a surprise since it was always framed like she'd already filed for divorce by the time they met.
Well, that's because you're not willing to admit what you gals are about, because this didn't surprise me at all.
I guess this omission allows her to remain a more sympathetic character.
What happened was...
Exactly, you're trying to shine a turd. That's what's going on here. You're trying to shine a turd. There's nothing sympathetic about this narcissist.
I dove out of my marriage and into David's arms.
In the article, she writes, I careened from one intimate entanglement to the next, dozens of them, without so much as a day off between romances. You might have called me a serial monogamist, except that I was never exactly monogamous. Seduction was never a casual sport for me. It was more like a heist, adrenalizing and urgent. I would break into his deepest vault, steal all his emotional currency, and spend it on myself. I was someone's irresistible...
Holy shit. So she's admitting that she is a complete emotional leech. What is that? Emotional labor? It's what men pay, not women. Men pay emotional labor. So this woman's a vampire. She jumps from one man to another. She doesn't love any of them. She has no feelings for them. But the man is basically a mirror to shine her reflection to herself. Right? Then she dumps him when she's bored with him, just like she did her husband.
Treasure. I loved that sensation, and I needed it. Not sometimes, not even often.
Oh, by the way, my man Sheedler pointed out too, like if men go to foreign countries to bang women, they're demonized for it. And yet that's exactly what this woman is doing. She's going to foreign countries and using and dumping men.
But always. I might indeed win the man eventually, but over time, and it wouldn't take long, his unquenchable infatuation for me would fade, as his attention returned to everyday matters. This always left me feeling abandoned and invisible. Love that could be quenched was not nearly enough love for me.
Infatuation's final destination, the complete devaluation of self.
Interestingly, she seems to treat relationships the same way she discusses moving to a new house.
We're moving because I have to move every few years. And we've been here 6 years, which is like in dog years or in Liz years, that's like a century.
Think about that, guys. For you and I, for the average person, moving is a chore we just want to get over with. This woman lives such a, pampered life. She does it out of boredom.
Who sells a house to move a quarter of a mile away for no reason whatsoever, except that they like to move? Welcome to my pathology.
I mention all this to pinpoint the apparent root cause of her woes. The unhealthy intensity of her need to feel adored, to the point of relishing being the other woman, is something the movie...
Yeah, she's a narcissist. Right, exactly.
...didn't fully convey, and a problem I don't think the book even thoroughly addressed by the end.
I'm in serious trouble. I don't know what to do. Oh, God, help me, please.
One common criticism I feel I should mention, a central point raised against this memoir is the inescapable stench of immense privilege. People are...
Thank you. It is immense privilege. Women, high status women, are the most privileged humans that have ever existed in all history.
Are generally annoyed that an upper middle class white woman is boo-hooing so hard about a divorce she caused. The standard reaction is essentially, oh, her husband is getting both houses in the settlement? How sad.
Exactly. This woman Her big woe is she didn't get everything she wanted. She didn't drain this man completely, right? And if he's getting both houses, obviously this woman, he must have found out she was cheating. That's right. This woman is to blame for everything in her life, and she takes zero accountability for it. This is standard female behavior. That's why her book is so popular and the movie was popular.
And then she gets paid to travel for a year and complains the whole time. Let me play her a song on the world's smallest violin. And I get it. Although depression and misery don't discriminate, it can be easy to dismiss the pain
This woman wasn't depressed, lady.
of well-off people. Surely they should be able to wipe away their tears with copies of their bank statements and get on with life. So
But
if
that's exactly what she did.
you can't endure the grievances of a privileged person, then this book and movie
Not only did she do that, she's being praised for doing that by millions of women like you.
isn't for you. You also can't avoid the feel of her upper crust New York liberalism and its narrow lens that mostly examines phenomena at face value. It's a disposition that's more prominent in the India and Bali sections of the book, though still infused throughout. For example, the opening lines of the film, which are taken from the book, describe how a psychologist friend of hers was daunted by the task of counseling Cambodian refugees who'd endured countless horrors. What could she offer these people in terms of help? How could she possibly relate to their suffering?
So guess what all these people wanted to talk about? It was all, I met this guy in the refugee camp.
So basically, she says everyone just wanted to talk about their love lives. And so Liz concludes, this is what we are like. Collectively, as a species, this is our emotional landscape. Never mind that processing deeply traumatic events is exceptionally difficult to do, let alone with a foreign stranger who would hardly understand, and people of color have deeply ingrained cultural stigma surrounding therapy that would also present a barrier to opening up. So yes, relationship drama is a bit of a lighter topic than genocide. The point
Yeah, I would say so. Mrs. Nuanced.
is Liz interpreted a complex, layered scenario and came to an oddly simplistic conclusion, one that just affirms her own understanding of the world. There's gonna be a lot of that.
Yeah, of course it's simplistic. Because it's self-centered. There's nothing there.
At the very least, she's aware of her privilege and often reminds us she has a leg up in this world.
The privilege of my skin color, the privilege of the city I live in, New York City, the privilege of the moment that I live in.
Again,
The only privilege this woman has is female privilege. All the rest don't count. Right? Other than the wealth. Being a woman's number one, and then a long way down the list is being wealthy. Everything else doesn't matter.
again, pointing to the question of privilege because of the fact that I'm a writer and because of the fact that I've been able to build a career as a writer and sort of organize my time in a certain way, I have access to a lot more time than other people might have to think about those things. I was able to...
And yet she came up with nothing in that time. Nothing but self-love. That was her answer to all this, with all this time dealing with these so-called issues.
Say, I'm going to take one entire year and do literally nothing every minute of the day except think about all these questions.
In the book, she occasionally acknowledges her advantages and how unremarkable her champagne problems are. Quote, "The tragedies in my life have been of a personal and largely self-created nature, not..."
Thank you for admitting it. First of all, she has no problems. Her life is on more than easy mode, like the boys say, cheat mode. Her life is on cheat mode. And any problem she's had is because she caused them. So really, she has no problems. She has no exterior troubles.
Epically oppressive. I went through a divorce and a depression, not a few centuries of
If it rains in her world, it's because she's taking a shower.
murderous tyranny. I had a crisis of identity, but I also had the resources, financial, artistic, and emotional, with which to try to work it out.
I want to go someplace where I can...
This is important, the act of indulgence. What I tell you, this was complete hedonism. This was her answer to the problems she caused.
marvel at something. Language, gelato, spaghetti, something.
After losing herself in relationships for nearly 2 decades, Liz wants to make sense of her identity when it isn't tied to someone else or wrapped in the endless quest for validation. When she chose her destination, she was pleased to discover they all started with the letter I, a happy coincidence for a journey of self-discovery, and cheesy enough for her friends to make fun of her for. There's something to be said about how Liz arrives.
But there was no self-discovery, right? Was there? What's your name again? Quality culture. There was no self-discovery at all. She just pampered herself for a year.
With a preconceived idea of what each place will be like or should be about. Choosing a little concept for each country as if going to a theme park seems limiting in a way, seems to close your mind to other.
It doesn't seem, and it's not limiting. There's nothing there. Okay, guys, if you went and pampered yourself, you guys are trashed if you engage in hedonism, right? But these women they praise each other for the hedonism. Their whole life is directed towards hedonism. So any of you guys who decide to engage in a hedonistic lifestyle, yeah, I say go for it. Because obviously I'm not into double standards. Anyway, this is as far as we're going to go with this. This is 52 minutes long, and everything we need to see about this scumbag artist here was said in the first 12 minutes. This is a narcissist who wrote a narcissistic story about herself, and they made a movie over it, and the average woman loved it because she speaks for the average woman. I want you to realize that. And that's the gist of this video. You know, it's funny. I get angry over certain topics, but man, this narcissism really pissed me off. Anyway, we'll end it here.